Good morning, everybody. Today is February 4th, 2025, and this Water Issues Subcommittee meeting is now being called to order. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Rusing.
Here.
Member Fruworth.
Here.
Member Gambogi.
I am here.
All are present.
Next item.
Item 3A is approval of the January 7th, 2025 Council Subcommittee on Water Issues meeting minutes.
Do I hear any changes? No. And let it be noted that Councilwoman Fruworth was absent for this meeting, so you won't be participating in the vote.
Abstain.
You'll abstain. Thank you. Okay, do I hear a motion? Well, I'll make my own motion then. Thank you. I move to approve the January 7th, 2025 Council Subcommittee on Water Issue meeting minutes. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Passes 2-0. Next item is WSA 24-013, a water service application for 11.66 acre-feet per year, submitted by Michael Taylor Architects on behalf of owner YH Development Properties, location APN 10913-001D, 500 South Marina Street, 8 parcels comprising 3.5 acres.
Good morning, Water Issues Subcommittee. I'm Brian Reese. I'm the Water Resources Environmental Service Manager for City of Prescott Public Works Department. So let me see if I can make sure this is coming up here. If we could get the WSA 24-013 presentation up on the screen, please. Make sure I'm not supposed to push a button here. Just 1 second. Leslie's going to go check and get this up for us so we have some visuals as we start off. What we have here for you today is a water service application for a 90 unit multifamily apartment complex. And here we go. So as shown up on the screen, this project is located off of Marina Street, just south of LaRue Street, encompassing both sides of Marina, shown in the red hatching area there. So it will redevelop. There's an existing building there on the west side of Marina, and then the open fields and area to the east. So a water service application for this project was submitted in accordance to the amended water policy for 2022. The estimated water usage for this project will be...
Brian, let me
yes.
interrupt you. Originally, the applicants went to P&Z and they wanted an additional 16 units, 106 units total. So did they have to resubmit another water service application for 90 units?
So we had an original water service application for 90 units and an original estimate, water demand estimate for 90 units. So when they wanted to go back to that original application, we already had all of that documentation.
Okay, so they never got any further than that with
Yes.
the water. All righty. Right. Thank you for the clarification.
No problem. So this project is requesting or is estimating a need for 11.66 acre-feet of water. It did go through the Planning and Zoning Commission on My buttons just don't seem to be working today. Could we advance to the next slide, please, IT? Not sure if they can hear me. I think they can. There we go. Okay. So this shows right here the site plan that shows the basic setup and layout for the apartment complex. It also shows location where landscape is proposed. So we utilize this for the demand estimate. The applicant, Michael Taylor, the applicant's architectural firm, provided the demand estimate. They utilized the water resource management model multiplier provided by the city of 0.12 acre-feet per unit to obtain the 10.8 acre-feet per year of estimated indoor or building usage. The project is proposing 0.57 acres of landscape, following the landscape code for the city of a low drought or low water usage planting. We can then utilize the 1.5 acre-feet multiplier from Arizona Department of Water Resources to estimate 0.86 acre-feet per year of outside or outdoor water use. So the total estimated demand for the project would be 11.66 acre-feet. So with that, currently, with the water budget set up by this Water Issues Subcommittee, there is available in the residential water budget 25 acre-feet at this point in time. This usage would take 11.66 of those acre-feet of usage for that, for your consideration. That is below the threshold for an appeal, so there will not be a need for that. Given that the water budget is available for it, staff has no objection to moving this forward for approval through full council if that is so the recommendation of the Water Issues Subcommittee. So with that, I think that's the basic information I have for you. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We also have a representative from the applicant and representative from Michael Taylor, the architect, here to answer any questions you might have on the project.
Okay, thank you, Brian. First of all, I'd like to say this property in its current state is an eyesore. It's blighted, it's run down, and the neighbors have been having to look at this for, 20 years. And I'm glad that the applicants are going to put in a very nice apartment complex here. It ticks all the boxes for infill. It'll add more units, hopefully for local residents, workforce housing, who can work downtown and walk back home or ride a bike. And so I think this is a great project. I think the water application for 90 units is well within our budget. And this is just the preliminary phase. There's a lot of questions that are going to be answered when they resubmit a preliminary plat or a site plan that has a survey on it, because I have questions about stormwater drainage there, because there's going to be a big slope on the southeast end of that property that's going to be dug out. And where is all that water going to go after running down the hill? They're going to have a lot of water running off the roofs. And so even though this is just preliminary, hopefully those questions will be answered as the application makes its way through. So I think the first thing we need to do is allocate water. That's always a major hurdle. And once they get that, then we can move this project along. Ms. Fruworth, do you have any comments?
No, I'd like to make a motion.
Well, let's hear from Ted first.
I have no comments.
And before we make a motion, I'd like to hear from the applicants too, what their plans are.
Good morning. My name is Mark Van Wormer. I'm the developer on the project, and any questions that anybody's got, I'm happy to answer.
So I was just going to ask you, what are your next steps after the water approval process?
We're still contemplating our path forward as far as really the unit count. So we're doing some due diligence on that, and then we'll make a determination as to whether we want to proceed forward with any of those conversations.
Okay, thank you. All right, any comments from the public? I see Sandy Griffiths back there. Hi, Sandy. Any comments? Okay. All righty, thank you. All right, do I hear a motion?
I move to recommend forwarding WSA 24-013 to council for approval.
Second. All in.
Passes 3-0. Item 3C, presentation and discussion regarding a potential memorandum of understanding with the Nature Conservancy.
Good morning, Subcommittee for Water Issues. I'm Leslie Grazer, Water Resource Project Manager. I have the pleasure today of sharing with you a proposal of a memorandum of understanding with the Nature Conservancy for grassland restoration in the Big Chino Subbasin. The MOU seeks approval to further study the possible sites on the Big Chino and subsequently recommend which sites and techniques are feasible for the restoration work. So we do have a brief presentation for you, and I'd like to introduce Kim Schoeneck. She's the Arizona Water Program Director, who will start the presentation, followed by Selena Pau, the Verde River Project Manager. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Subcommittee on Water. As Leslie mentioned, I'm Kim Schoeneck with the Nature Conservancy. I live out in the Chino Valley area and have been working with the Conservancy for the past, I think 16 years. So a lot of familiarity with the river and the projects, and really enjoy this opportunity to talk with Prescott on land and water management. Selena, did you want to add anything to your introduction? Okay. Selena has also worked with TNC for over a decade. So again, a lot of familiarity with the locations. So the Nature Conservancy, I'll keep it very short. We are a very large conservation organization. We have programs in all 50 states and internationally. Our focus is on conservation work that moves projects forward to meet conservation issues locally. So we don't have sort of a global vision of this is the plan and this is what you do. We really work with local partners on identifying critical issues and addressing those conservation issues locally and regionally. So we work for the Arizona chapter. But I just wanted you to have a little bit of background on TNC. One more kind of critical point on TNC is we are a non-litigious organization, so we do not sue people. So if there's something we disagree about...
I've never heard that before, put that way. Promise?
Yes, we do not. We do enforce our contracts, so there is a difference. If you breach of contract, that's different, but that's a very special thing. But we don't... sue on endangered species issues. We don't sue based on any particular environmental agenda. We really believe that partnerships and local collaboration will get us where we want to be in the long term.
Ms. Ruworth?
I was trying to understand reading the package. Are you a government agency? Are you your own national, what are you as an organization? I'm not sure who we're doing business with.
We're a private nonprofit. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit. So we have been working for quite some time in the area. We really have focused in the last probably 15, 16 years on Verde Valley projects. In 2018, we really wanted to shift our focus and understand what we could and should be doing in the Upper Verde. So we convened a stakeholders group. We looked through a lot of data and tried to understand what are the threats to the Upper Verde River. And I think climate change and drought, prolonged drought, really is the driving force up in that area. There's been a lot of changes in pumping patterns over the last decade. And so through that stakeholders group, we really identified these kind of 4 key things we wanted to work on. Recreation and outreach. We want people to know where the river is. We want them to be able to go to the river and go to these outdoor spaces and understand why it's important. We want to increase aquifer recharge. You all do a lot of aquifer recharge within the AMA. We also want to ensure places we can do that outside of the AMA. That's primarily going to be through stormwater. It could potentially be through effluent in the future, but that's a ways out. We also want to minimize pumping. And so that's things like reducing current pumping. So we worked with Abra Water Company on a water efficiency study. We evaluated that system. We identified sources of loss and helped them reduce those losses. So when we say minimize pumping, that doesn't mean we want to block people's pumping. We want to make sure the water that's getting used is used efficiently and minimize where possible. It also means we are very concerned about increased development in places like the Paulden area, where we have, one more straw with domestic wells. And I think domestic wells are a challenge across our region. And then we also want to do watershed condition improvement. So watersheds work best when they are healthy and water is moving slowly across the landscape and being able to sink in. So these were kind of our 4 key areas that we wanted to work on. So we engaged with the Del Rio State Park project. We engaged with Abra Water Company. We are completing a Big Chino assessment Selena's going to talk about. And then I wanted to just mention this project. Some of you may have heard about it. We are not coming to you today to ask the city to participate in any way, but I thought it was important for you guys to be aware of this program as we talk about the Big Chino assessment. And so this is our Upper Verde Regional Conservation Partnership Program, and these are conservation easements to protect large farms and ranches in that area. So through these, it's voluntary, so the landowner has to want to participate. They are compensated for what they do on their property. We have worked with the Wells family near Headwaters. We've also worked extensively with the Hauser family. There are several conservation easements throughout Yavapai County. What these do is ensure that those properties will not develop in the future. They cannot be subdivided. You can't have housing development on them. And we are focused on places where it's large intact landscapes. We are not looking to do conservation easements within urban areas. Our conservation easements are very large tracts of land, and they are outside of this development area. So you mentioned infill earlier. We could not agree with you more. Infill is critical in our communities. We understand housing is a challenge. So we're not targeting lands that border these urban areas. We are very much targeting lands that are further out and still are large intact landscapes. So that map just shows you on the Big Chino landscape where we're focused. And we have about $22 million of federal and private funding dedicated towards that. With the current administration and what's happening right now, I can't say for sure that we'll have $22 million next month, but we sure hope to be able to protect those farms and ranches in the future. So with that, that's...
Time for a question.
Yeah, please.
You were saying that the farmers are compensated. Compensated for what?
For the loss of development value.
For a conservation
So when we
easement.
secure a conservation easement, it permanently attaches to the title of that property and restricts future use of that property.
And where's the money come from?
So in this case, it's coming from state and federal and private sources.
The taxpayer.
Federal dollars would be taxpayer dollars, yes. private dollars are foundations and private individuals.
So this is an example of us sending our taxpayer dollars to Washington and having them sent back to us for wonderful programs like this to protect the Upper Verde River watershed area and help with recharge and overdraft. I have a question about the scope of this project. Are you looking at the whole Big Chino aquifer?
Yeah, so the dotted line is the Big Chino
Okay,
aquifer
so
boundary, roughly.
That's a big area. How long do you think this project will continue? 20 years?
To secure, we have this first 22 million, so that will target willing landowners. And I would say we have 5 years in this first round to get that done.
5 years.
And then if it is successful and landowners continue to be interested, we would continue to work on that.
Yes. And do you have any MOUs with the ranchers? Because pretty much everyone out there is a rancher.
We do not have any specific agreements with ranchers. We do have interested landowners. We've just recently worked with Central Arizona Land Trust to support a conservation easement. And then we completed another conservation easement this summer, the Yavapai Ranch easement. So we don't tend to do an MOU with a landowner ahead of doing an easement. We tend to work through a purchase, and it's a purchase of development rights.
So are you going to be getting MOUs with other governmental entities besides the city of Prescott, such as the county, Arizona State Land Department?
So for what we're looking at with you all, so this is just an overlay project. I'm going to let Selena talk about the Big Chino assessment and what we worked on there, because this is about doing work on landowners' property. And so that's why we're seeking an MOU with you to make sure we enter into that agreement with clear expectations on our side and your side about what we will or will not do on your lands.
Okay.
And so when we work with a landowner, if we're asking them to make changes on their land, we would do a very similar process.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So building off of what Kim mentioned on the RCPP grant, we also completed a Big Chino assessment. So this really focuses on the Big Chino area, the aquifer that you saw on the previous slide. We received funding from a private foundation to do this assessment. We started with contracting with Natural Channel Design and engineering around 2024. And we really started with just gathering a lot of data. We really needed to understand what was going on in the area, what information's already out there, what kind of public information's already out there. And then we reached out to our stakeholders. Who is our stakeholders in the area? Who is working in the area? A lot of it is federal agencies, state, local agencies, as well as private landowners. So we have done a large outreach effort and hosted a stakeholder meeting with a lot of these different agencies, other nonprofits that are working in this area, and we really just tried to gather what was their priorities for this area and what kind of current projects were going on. So partners included Forest Service, Yavapai Apache Nation. They do own some parcels in this area. We did some state lands, so different state agencies, Arizona Forestry and Fire Management. They came up to attend this meeting. And we also did some individual outreach with private ranchers as well, really understand what were their issues and how do we help them maintain their ranches and maintain keep their cattle and their livelihood intact. So coming out of those engagement process, we really saw that grassland restoration is a major project area, kind of topic that everyone wants to maintain. You know, if you're having this is your ranch, you want to make sure your grassland is healthy. We also saw a lot of erosion. So if your grasslands aren't healthy, the area that you use to graze your cattle, their land is being lost. They don't want to be in a large gully system in a...
Let me interrupt you.
Yes.
A lot of these ranches lease land.
Yes.
from the Forest Service and from the state. Are these leased lands also included when you talk to the ranchers, or just
Yes.
their own
Yes.
deeded land?
It's all of the lands in
Okay,
the
it's
area. We
comprehensive.
work across jurisdictions. We have a really strong partnership with Prescott National Forest and have done different projects similar to grassland restoration, reducing erosion, kind of doing low-tech process-based restoration. So you can see in this picture right here, we use rocks and just natural material to help slow the flows and reduce that erosion. So it helps catches.
So this is to educate and encourage people to be good stewards of the land.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
and work with our partners who have the ability to do that and just help them get through that additional funding that they might lack.
Earlier, you mentioned the funding came from a private organization.
Yes.
What's the private organization?
We work with Nina Mason Polium Charitable Trust. They are based in Phoenix and Indianapolis. And so we received large private foundation funding through them to do these projects.
Excuse me, what was the name again?
Nina Mason Charitable Trust. Polium Charitable Trust, sorry.
And Mr. Gambogi, going forward, I'd appreciate it if you would request to be recognized by the chair before you speak.
I would if I pushed the button and you recognized me.
Well, you could do this.
Okay. And we did complete this assessment in September 2025. This is just an example of what head cutting looks like. This may or may not be in the Big Chino, but this is probably replicated throughout. And you can just see as the flow comes through the landscape, through the grasslands, it's just slowly eroding away. And so you'll see that head cut just slowly move further and further back. And then that's what causes the gullying and the erosion. This is just caused by increased flow and just the accelerated flow coming off of the landscape. So this is what you're probably seeing right now is the Big Chino Wash. The Big Chino Wash obviously goes through your Big Chino water ranch. And if you've gone out there, you'll see large gullying and incised washes through the Big Chino. And so this is kind of like the area that we are interested in addressing, really looking into your private property and understanding what are the issues, what are the highest priorities according to your staff, and what kind of projects is feasible that we could complete.
I have a question. You know, there's a huge burn area out there. Are you going to be working with that, trying to do some restoration on that burn area?
We can look at that area. If that is on your property, that is definitely something that we can look at and see what is the high priority.
It's not on the water ranch, but it looks like it. It was on private property.
We can take
Forest
a-
Service. I was just wondering if it was in your scope.
We haven't really explored your Big Chino Water Ranch too much, but that is something that we can note. And when we if we were to move forward and actually do a full assessment and kind of come up with priorities, that could be something that we look at.
All righty, thank you.
So next steps is, we've completed this assessment. We are now working to work with landowners, private landowners, agency, to really get a pilot project moving forward. We do have funding secured to implement a project right now, and we are currently working with Yavapai Prescott Indian Tribe along Granite Creek to do something very similar. It's not as far away from a water source like Granite Creek or the Verde River, but it is a large restoration project, improving grasslands and reducing erosion to the Granite Creek. And so right now we have an MOU presented to you for your review. And it's really just to make sure that we're all in agreement on the types of project we want to do. And if there's any comments or edits, we are open to, discussing further.
Okay, I have a question. You know, I grew up rural, and I've seen a lot of erosion caused by overgrazing. How are you going to address that to keep your restored areas from being overgrazed?
You know, there's a lot of different techniques.
I'm not against cows. I'm a
right.
beef eater.
I love my steak too. Yeah.
But, you know, they do a lot of damage if they're overgrazed or they're, you know, over the years.
Right.
You know, it happens.
There are a lot of different techniques out there. You know, this is 2025. We have great technology at our fingertips. So one of the techniques we could probably, if a rancher is interested, is potentially look at was it fenceless virtual fencing. And so essentially each cow will have like a little shock collar, and so we can try to encapsulate that area to tell the cows through the technology that, hey, don't go through here, but stay over there. And so it allows just a smaller area of their grazing allotments to be just to rest a little bit and just to allow for the restoration to take hold. And then, you know, maybe after 2-3 years, depending on a lot of different things, if the landscape improves, then we can allow the cows back in and rest another area. So we just be on a rotation.
Yeah, like rotating a crop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there sheep out there still? Because I know sometimes cattlemen
Not that
will
I
run
know
sheep.
of.
Okay, and they really eat the grass down to a nub. Yeah. Okay. All righty.
I think that's it. Any other questions?
Okay, Mr. Gambogi.
No.
I did want to add, Nina Mason Polium Charitable Trust is the name of the foundation we partner with. They are a private foundation based out of Phoenix and Indianapolis, like Selena mentioned. Nina was an animal lover and really has focused a lot of the charitable giving from that foundation on animals and animal welfare. So that has translated to things like big buildings at the Phoenix Zoo, a lot of work with the Humane Society, and then in the last 5 years, a real emphasis on preserving the natural environment to improve conditions for wildlife. And so that's where the Nature Conservancy's funding with the trust has come from, is that animal welfare connection that was so part of her heart and her legacy. And the Polium family owned the Arizona Republic previously.
That's right.
In the Indianapolis Star. So that's their history in connection to this land. And the foundation truly gives with a notion of how we protect Arizona and enhance the state that we live in. And that's why their work is focused in the Verde on a lot of these things.
Yeah, and we got to remember that this is also a habitat that the ranchers share their land with all the natural wildlife and birds, insects, and part of the ecosystem. So this is very important to keep our ecosystem healthy. And I want to thank you for coming up with this project and getting the funding. It was a lot of work. And so I think it sounds like it'd be a great project to implement and to have the city of Prescott participate. Lois, any comments?
No, not for you. I have some questions for the staff.
Okay, thank you. So any public comments out there? Okay, all righty.
You said staff plural, so we'll jump.
Well,
we'll both
that's I
stand
wasn't
up
sure
and
who
happy
was
to
gonna
help.
jump in to answer my questions. So I appreciate the work that the group that just presented was sharing with us. But what I'm really lacking to be able to vote is understanding what's in it for the city of Prescott. What's the risks? What's the opportunities? What's the concerns? What's the legal assessment? I kind of feel like I've gotten half a selling pitch and I'm missing the other half. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for from you guys. And I would say the same thing if we pass this today. That should be what's in the package going forward for the rest of the council, because I always want to hear it from our own staff, what's in it for us or what the risks are. Thanks.
Certainly. Okay, and I'll let Leslie just jump in as move forward. But I'm going to get you through kind of as I've as we've gone through this process for 6, maybe 8 months at this point, as they were putting the Big Chino water assessment in, they provided all these documents to the city, all the way through from a draft document that we were able to review, we were able to comment on. We actually participated in some of the language within that particular document. So we've been able to assess this project as it's moved forward from its beginning all the way till now. We have 4,000 to 5,000 acres of land out in the Big Chino Water Ranch. It sits there. We have leases with the rancher to do some grazing on it. They help take care of that property, but it's a huge, large land area that the city is responsible for maintaining and keeping its health up with. So this project, when it came in, was a project where we could actually utilize some of these projects that they're working on to help maintain the health of that area, sustain the grasslands, look at the aquifer health, slow the water down that comes from stormwater runoff that used to spread out and absorb into the land, contributing to healthy vegetation in the area. And in time has now, created more gullies, more incised washes where that water is running off faster. It's creating that we're losing that water from our ranch. We're also, it's contributing to these head cutting conditions that are making things progressively worse. So this was an opportunity to get with an organization who has lots of prior experience in these areas to provide projects within our ranch that will help maintain it and help reduce those effects. So that, in my opinion, is a huge opportunity for the city to participate, help maintain that ranch, and start a collaboration with an organization that has a specialized experience in doing those things. They had their engineer come in and do a full assessment of the area from hydrology to the issues and come up with alternatives and these pilot programs. So I think that's where the benefit from the city really comes in, is that it helps us manage this land so that it isn't degrading over time. It's one aspect. We have other things that we need to do on our end, but it's one aspect that we can do, and we can help fulfill those objectives of keeping that land in the best condition that it could be.
Okay, I'd just like to comment. We've all seen what happens in California when they get those big atmospheric rivers come through, dump a ton of water, and we're having a drought. The whole Southwest, the whole country, we're having a drought. And that water gets dumped and it just completely runs into the Pacific Ocean. It doesn't help with recharge. It's not captured anyway to help the population. And it's a similar situation here. Because of the drought, the land isn't, like you said, getting the natural recharge to the aquifer. Water is just, we'll get a big storm, big monsoon, causes the washes to run, or is it ephemeral washes? They're bone dry, then all of a sudden they're a raging river and you have flash floods, and it just runs into the Verde and straight down to Phoenix. And it does not help our aquifer with the natural recharge. So, Leslie?
I think you're making a statement about what you're seeing, so I think that's valid. This work will help address that slow flow. So maybe we need to put this in tandem with Councilwoman Furwert's comment, is that on the agenda, the item summary, staff recommends forwarding the proposal to the council for approval. And the reasoning behind that is, in the background, the city believes in land stewardship, aquifer recharge and protection, and improved ephemeral stream routing to reduce erosion. But of course, that also helps with recharge. So we analyze this very carefully. I think Brian has run through what we did. We've met in meetings. We've reviewed the report. We looked at the city's objectives. We worked through the MOU process. The MOU went to our legal department to make sure there wasn't anything out of step there. We wouldn't want you to sign something that, of course, wasn't reviewed by the legal department. So stepping back just in history a little bit, maybe to help with your question, Councilwoman Rusing, is that at one time the city invested in a land management plan for the Big Chino, and I also looked at that again, and this work aligns with that as well. So I hope that gives you the structure behind the item today.
Okay. Any more questions?
I do.
Yes, Lois.
So, again, trying to make this, use this as a learning experience for when you come forward to council. I really do think you need to help us understand that you've gotten legal and the city manager and everyone's supportive of that. I think you really need to say none at this time for financial impact. We're working on the 26, budget right now. So will there be no requests in the 26 budget because this wonderful group is going to provide all the funding to do what we need to have done? So I just think as you go forward asking us to sign an MOU, we're looking for your internal assessment, even a slide or two following them, that you could come back up and make the pitch from our point of view. And then I think you'll get everybody shaking their head and voting the way you'd like us to. But I just felt like I was missing trust me, I read your front covers, but it was kind of missing the last of the, selling pitch for me.
We'll definitely do better. It goes up a pretty long chain of people after it leaves me. So I'm more than happy to put in more detail if that's what's needed, and if leadership.
It's for purposes of the record.
Yeah,
the public record that everybody is aligned and it has been fully assessed and vetted and it's good to go. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Yeah, but no problem putting that information in, and if it's caught, as it goes up the review chain, and they seek the things you're asking, that's not a problem for staff. I'm happy to put that in.
Yeah.
It's always that budgeting of how many words do you put in, and we put a big couple attachments to this one. So more than happy to do that. Thank you so much for the input and the advisement.
Yeah. This is kind of
It's very helpful to know what you guys need to make your assessment. So we'll be jotting our notes down, and with each memo, we try to make it more efficient for you to understand.
I just want you to be selfish about this. That's really what I'm saying. I read their, 40-page engineering report, and I got it from their point of view, but I haven't heard it from your point of view. So what you just said before, what you've added, put that flavor to it in the presentation or the package as this comes forward to the bigger council.
Yeah.
So I'm with Kathy, restoring our grassland so our water that falls on our land sinks into our aquifer is nothing but good. And if someone else is going to pay for doing that, this is a win-win-win. So it's all good. We just need to make sure it's that clear in the pre-reading so that nobody sits up here on council, full council, and has any problems.
We'll happily share that with Director Rowich so that when that goes up the review chain, that it, there's another check
Yeah.
to make
In a
sure
nutshell,
it meets your need.
this is kind of like a dress rehearsal because we don't take a vote here. We just make a recommendation and then it goes to the full council. And that's where you have your, shall you say, the Act 1, 2, and 3. So, Mr. Gambogi, any comments, please?
Yeah, I pushed my request to talk button, so you didn't recognize it.
Well, unfortunately,
I got some questions.
I don't have the button.
There's numbers bouncing around, and I'm not following them. I think I saw or heard a number of $22 million over 5 years. So is that basically the size of this project?
No, I'm sorry. Do you want me to? Want me to answer? So what Kim had offered was the Upper Verde Regional Conservation Partnership Program and the details behind that to give you a better idea of what TNC is doing. For this MOU in particular, that dollar value is not directly involved. So this is an MOU. Remind me, the funding for this will come from Pulliam.
And what?
Oh, come
do you have
on.
any idea what the cost of that assessment is?
So we have worked on assessments on smaller parcels. Your parcel is quite large. So we will have to identify specific areas where we want detailed information and where we are broad, and that will help dictate that total cost. And then we will put that out to bid. And then we'll fund that assessment. I would estimate that assessment is probably about $75,000.
That's the assessment.
Correct.
The assessment's going to have in it, well, this needs to be done and this needs to be done. Who pays for that?
So we will work with the city to identify which projects under that assessment we want to move forward. And then we will work out a budget for those. It is not our intent to come back to the city and say, hey, you need to pay for this and that in the immediate near future. We do want to understand what that scale is, and then we want to look for funding to do that work. So with the Granite Creek project that Selena mentioned, it's a partnership with Yavapai Prescott Indian Tribe. We identified a wide range of projects that needed to be done. We were able to secure about $350,000 to implement that work. The tribe did commit some funding that they wanted to commit so they could expand the work that we were able to do. So the goal is not to hand you an assessment and tell you good luck. It's to hand you an assessment, prioritize that work within there, and then seek funding to implement that. Funding sources that could cover this kind of work would be the WIFA Water Conservation Grant Fund. That one is currently open. I hope it gets funding in the next cycle so we could go to that next year. The WIFA Water Supply and Development Fund is also another likely funding source for this work, but we need to have plans to be able to go submit for that. So another example, we worked with the city of Clarkdale on some stormwater management projects. They identified a project with their cemetery where they had flooding issues. We did a very similar kind of assessment type work. Following that, we worked on a grant application with them to Water Supply Development Fund. They were awarded $900,000 last month to implement that work. So we would make a determination whether the city moves forward securing funding through grant sources or if that's something you all want us to do. But those are decisions we make when we know the scale of the project and the total cost of the project. This really gets us through that first step of let's get an assessment so we know specifically what we're talking about on your land.
Take me through an example, either Clarkdale or the Yavapai tribe.
Mm-hmm.
You said at Clarkdale you got a grant for how much?
$900,000.
And what the total project cost?
$900,000.
So the grant covered the project?
Correct.
What about a Yavapai Indian tribe with Granite Creek?
Do you want to do the total budget on that one? That one's not in my head.
Yeah. We don't have like a total cost of the entire project. We kind of discussed what is the priorities for the tribe. And right now the cost is around $350,000. And we probably have another maybe $100,000, you know, with inflation and just cost of labor, it fluctuates, but maybe $100,000 to complete the design project that we have right now.
So $450,000 to complete the design project.
The design, yes.
And then you still don't have the numbers to tell you how much it's going to cost to do whatever you want to do.
For Yavapai Prescott,
Yeah.
we assume it's going to be a total of $450,000 total.
To do the project or the assessment?
The project.
The assessment is complete.
Okay. So
And we bid out the first portion of it, and that was around $350,000, and we have a contract in place. That work is currently occurring. If you drive out, you'll see tractors over on Granite Creek. That's that work that's happening right now. The next phase of the work, we will need to bid out and get a total cost. So we can't say what contracting is going to cost in 6 to 9 months when we're done with this current phase. I mean, you guys are all involved enough right now in construction projects to know how hard it is to estimate. So we don't want to say it is $120,000 and then, you know, it might be $150,000, it might be $100,000. It will depend on how much money we're able to secure, as well as what the bids come in at. So if we secure $120,000, We will bid out the work, and then if the bid comes in at 150, we'll negotiate to a $120,000 contract.
So in what you're proposing, there's no cost to the city of Prescott.
Correct.
I think what we're trying to get at in a roundabout way is if we sign this MOU, what are we on the hook for?
What you're on the hook for really is allowing access to the property for our consultants so that they can do this work and providing expertise and input into the project. When we complete that assessment, then we will say, this is the specific project that we want to implement. And then we will have a conversation about if it's a $500,000 project, TNC, the Nature Conservancy, we probably are not going to be able to come up with $500,000 on our own. So we'll have a conversation and we'll say, hey, here's this other project that's really great. Let's focus on this project that's maybe $100,000 that we can get done in the first year. And see how that goes and see what benefits we get, because we also want you all to learn about what you want to happen on your land. But completing the assessment does not obligate you to implement it. It doesn't obligate you to continue working with us after the assessment is complete. So it really is to give us an opportunity to have a specific conversation about your lands, because again, we can't estimate what it would cost to do restoration without having an engineer on the ground, looking at those, identifying which head cuts and how big. So this will probably get about 30% engineering design on these projects so that we can get a rough budget. And then once we have that rough budget, we can then work on how we fund implementation.
Okay, and it's usually with grants? And you will look for grants, and then the city can look for grants?
Correct. So we work a lot with private grants, private foundations, private individuals. And then when it comes to larger scale state funding, one of the things to consider is you all have a lot of things on your plate. Some of them are critical infrastructure within your community. You may be choosing to go to one of those grant funds with that infrastructure project as a priority. We don't want to go to that same grant source with a project that would compete with your project, right? Like if you've got a water main issue, that's probably your highest project, right? You don't want us to go out there and say, let's get some funding from this for restoration. Or you may look at that funding source and say, we don't have anything else that we need in that funding pool right now. Let's go ahead and move this forward. So that's a choice that you all will have to make. And your staff is well versed in these grants. I know you all have worked with WIFA extensively. And so those are the sorts of things that you'll have to look at. Grant funds also can be from Department of Forestry. So there's a wide range of other granting sources that are both state and federal that you guys don't currently access because they're not city infrastructure projects, but they would be applicable for your ranch lands.
Okay. Any more comments, Lois?
Yeah, this discussion has been super healthy. I read that MOU and I wasn't really sure what we were getting into. The MOU itself is pretty fluffy. Council wants to understand, who's decision making, who's going after funding, is the funding, so there's a level for me. What you just saw 3 people trying to do, you don't want to have 7 people trying to do in the future. So I really do think you guys need to spend a little more time, and I don't know, I'd love to hear from our legal resource down there. The MOU for me just is I like this. Is this the scope of this? Is this an MOU from now till when we're done? Is this a scope for just the assessment? And then once we finish the assessment, we'll have another MOU for the next phase. So I've just read it again and I'm still not sure. Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Matthew Pedracki, Deputy City Attorney. Yeah, I'm looking at it for the first time today, covering for Chris, who's off to court. But my review of it first is it is an MOU, right? It doesn't really create significant legal relationships. It says it's non-binding in paragraph 11. So and it is fluffy because it's an MOU, not a contract. While the parties are committed to using their best endeavors to achieving its purpose, this document is not intended to create binding or legal obligations on the parties. So that gives me comfort level that it's an MOU. The second thing I look for is there an easy out for us if things are going south? And we have a 30-day out for convenience. So we can end it within 30 days, even though it's written for a 5-year term. The idea is we're all going to play nice together and try to get to the final outcome. I read this as something that gets us through the assessment process. And if anything goes beyond that, then we'll be looking at additional either contracts, if it involves any city contributions, or another MOU. I think this MOU looks pretty standard. It's not raising any major concerns for me. I'd probably throw in something a little stronger about the confidential information, just an understanding that Arizona does have a Public Records Act and we have to comply with that. So we don't necessarily know ultimately what the outcome would be on a court determination of whether or not we have to give over information. So typically what we'll do is just kind of write in that both parties understand that Arizona Public Records Act applies, and if ordered by a court of competent jurisdiction, or maybe even in our own assessment that we have to give up certain documents, we give those up. Otherwise, there's a basic indemnity here on liability that says they'll be responsible for their own negligence or intentional acts that they or their representatives cause. And we'll be responsible for any negligent acts that our representatives or city staff cause. I always look for that. That's good to have that in there. I might strengthen that a little bit.
Does an MOU have a time frame?
It can. This one does.
It does? Where?
Yeah, up top in term 4. The MOU will begin on March 3rd, 2025, and will remain in effect until March 4th, 2030. And the 30-day termination for convenience is in paragraph 6. It says either party may terminate the MOU by giving 30 days notice to the other party.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, if things seem to be going south, I can't necessarily perceive why they would. I think what they're asking for is permission to go onto our property with their representatives and do their assessment and come back with the assessment to the city and say, here are things we think the city may benefit from in terms of kind of conserving grasslands.
Are you finished, Matt? Yeah. Okay. I have a question for the Conservancy. If we do nothing, will things just get better on their own, or will they just get much worse?
Well, I think if we do nothing, the ranch and ranchlands tend to continue to have erosion. That erosion continues to eat away at viable grasslands. So if we do nothing, the ranch continues on as it has. If we start to do things, then we can slow down the erosion. We can increase infiltration. We can increase grass. We get to actually create this place that is an example of what good ranch management can look like. Your ranch is in the center of the Big Chino. And as we're thinking about what do we want to see out there in our grasslands and our working landscapes, I think we all benefit from it continuing to be ranches, whether or not there's, water extraction or, whatever is happening out there in terms of the historically irrigated ag. Having good, high quality ranch lands is a benefit to everybody. And so that's why we're really focused on this effort, is preserving those ranch lands makes those ranches more profitable for the neighbors, as well as for the city as you continue to lease that as a ranching operation. So I would say if we do nothing, the ranch continues to experience erosion and loss of grasslands. If we do something, we can improve that condition with time.
Yeah. Did you have a discussion with the Kekeffer family?
So we have not had many discussions with Kekeffer family. As you know, or probably know, maybe know, they are very reserved in their conversations, and they really are focused on their operations. We have informed them of the work that we're doing throughout. So we have not had any specific conversations about this project.
Because they're basically the tenant. We
Yes.
bought the property and we have a deal where they can stay on it. I don't know, forever, I guess.
Correct. But we do not want to have a conversation with your tenant until we have a conversation with you all.
Okay.
So they are aware of the Big Chino assessment.
Okay.
But our practice is to talk to landowners first.
Okay.
And be very open about if there's things that you do or don't want on your land. We want to know that. And then we want to approach and talk to your tenant with you.
All righty. Any more comments? Oh, Brian?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the assessment when we were talking about the money. And with these assessments, when we're going after grant applications, they prioritize projects that are kind of in that vein of construction ready, or at least getting to that point. And with this assessment and the evaluation up to 30% plans, that's what gets us to the ability to be ready when grant opportunities, funding opportunities come into existence. We've done that legwork so that we're now ready to move forward with that grant application, and we're not trying to put effort in getting ready for that. So that's a super benefit just for the assessment, because if funding sources are slowing down or not available to the city, you can put it aside and you can wait for those. But I also do want to make sure that you understand too, we have a budget for Big Chino Water Ranch. It's 5,000 acres out there that the city is managing. We went out there on a tour. I think we saw some barrels that had some, we didn't know exactly what was in it. Well, Leslie's already gotten with the plan together to get that infrastructure either upright and structurally stable or bring it down. I've talked to Matt Colleen on a few occasions about what we could do to help with the wildlife out there. He had suggestions about fencing and some other things that the city would have to invest money in order to do it, but it would create a situation where the wildlife wouldn't be so vulnerable to aspects of ranching or agriculture that are remnants of a past use on that land. So we could also look at these assessments when we're done, and if we have some money in our budget available to do some of this work to start it off, we could assess that too and say, okay, we're looking for this funding. TNC is going to help us look for the funding too, but at the same time, we'll want to assess some of our own internal budget towards getting some of these things done. It just gives us more opportunities, and it gets things ready for us to be able to implement that work. So.
Yeah. And then, of course, what would happen if the federal funding, the $22 million, goes away? Everything comes to a screeching halt, I guess.
So that funding is related just to the Regional Conservation Partnership focused on the conservation easements. So that is directly related with the ranch land protection in easements. It's not related to this MOU and to this project. So when we think about the different projects, there's, how do we protect those large ranches from development? But then the next tier is how do we restore our watershed condition and help create functional watersheds? So this work is what we're talking about with you. I want you guys to be aware of that easement work because you all are neighbors to those ranches, but it's not going to change what we're looking at in terms of watershed restoration and protection. So one great thing about the Conservancy right now is we do not have a lot of federal funding to do this type of work. Our land protection work does have more federal ties, but this restoration work is primarily private donors and foundation work.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. Gambogi.
I'd like to make a motion. I move to recommend forwarding the MOU to council for approval.
Second.
Passes 3-0. Next item is presentation and discussion regarding Northern Arizona Municipal Water Users Association.
Okay, so our next topic for you is the Northern Arizona Municipal Water Users Association. We use the term NAMWUA. Some of you, I think, are maybe fairly familiar with this organization that the city is involved with, but other of you may not have had a chance to know too much about NAMWUA. So I wanted to do a little presentation to let you know what the organization is and why the city participates in it. So I got a simple agenda for today. We're just going to go over the why the NAMWUA exists, who it is, who is
Brian?
NAMWUA made up of. Yes.
Right. And we pay a membership fee of $300,000 a year.
No, membership fee is based on the population base. It's a dual equation. All members pay a certain portion that is the same for each member, and then there's a additional membership fee based on the population of the organization. I don't have the exact number for you, but I know it's between $5,000 and $6,000 is what the city paid for NAMWUA for this year. Yep.
Right, thanks.
Yes. So we'll go over who NAMWUA is, who the members are, what NAMWUA does, why it exists, and then go over the Wolf Conference that NAMWUA puts on every couple of years, which is going on this year. So I wanted to make sure you were understood about that conference and knew that it was going on. So who is NAMWUA? NAMWUA is an organization made up of Northern and Central Arizona communities and municipal water companies. Presently, the city of Prescott is in NAMWUA along with Prescott Valley and town of Prescott Valley and the town of Chino Valley. Also in the Verde Valley, the town of Clarksdale, city of Cottonwood, and Camp Verde. North of us, Flagstaff and Sedona are involved in NAMWUA. We have seven organization members at this point in time. NAMWUA has grown. There's been other municipalities that have been involved with it during the time, so membership shifts back and forth. But these are the organizations that are involved in NAMWUA at this point in time. So NAMWUA has a board of directors. The chair of the board of directors is our own Mayor Good at this point in time. The directors are mainly made up of mayors or council people from the various members of the organization. So Flagstaff and Cottonwood. The mayor of Chino Valley is currently on the board at this point in time too. John Snickers is with the Arizona Water Company. They provide water throughout the state to various municipalities or cities or towns. They're on our board. He's on our board member. He provides water for city of Sedona, and also Sedona has representation just through their municipality. Neil Wadsworth with the city of Prescott Valley. He's their utilities director. He's kind of right now in. I'd say he's kind of a sitting board member. He might become permanent, or he might relinquish that responsibility to a council member in the future. NAMWUA also has a technical advisory committee. That committee is made up of members of the organization's membership, Flagstaff, Tracy Lund from the city of Prescott, Aaron Young from Flagstaff, and Mark Holmes from Chino Valley that I think you're associated with. He's a water consultant for Chino Valley, so he represents them on the TAC. And I'm honored to represent the city of Prescott on the TAC myself. Jeff Lowe from Camp Verde. He used to be He used to be a employee of the city of Prescott. He was on the capital improvement projects. He was a project manager for CIP under Tim Sherwood. And when he was here, he was involved in a lot of water infrastructure projects and flood control projects. So it's good to have him on the NAMWUA board. The NAMWUA TAC. Our executive director for NAMWUA is Ron Doba. So Ron is not only the executive director for NAMWUA, but he's also a coordinator for the Colorado Plateau Water Advisory Council and the Coconino Plateau Watershed Partnership. Ron was a member of the Governor's Water Policy Council and guided us through the Water Policy Council meetings and the work that they were doing to try to create a groundwater regulation for rural areas and alternative designations for assured water supply for other municipalities. So Ron was there at all those meetings and representing the interests of Central and Northern Arizona through that. Also, Ron is currently the chair of the Flagstaff Water Commission. He's been involved in water for decades now. He was the utility manager for the city of Prescott for a long time. He helped assist the town of Clarksdale and Bullhead City in the startup of their utility divisions. And he was also a client service manager for Black & Veatch Engineers for over 5 years. So he has a broad experience in water, and is he does all of the executive director duties for NAMWUA, keeping up with all the budgets. He keeps extremely tight records in every meeting. We always know to the cent where every dollar is spent that NAMWUA does and projects. He tries to project out, keeps all our meetings going, and he is our contact. He goes down and he will do lobbying for us down at the state legislature when we have bills or issues that we want to make sure that they understand. So he's a great resource for the entire NAMWUA membership. So moving into why NAMWUA exists, you got the mission statement there. This is to unite our expertise and resources in a collaborative effort to secure regional and local water resources for today and in the future. So NAMWUA's been around for quite a while. I want to say it's close to 22, 25 years, somewhere in that time frame. When NAMWUA was first created, there was actually a possibility of getting some water from the Colorado River for the northern communities. And that was, I think, one of the big reasons why it was created, to see if we could secure that water up north. Well, as time goes by, things have changed dramatically, as you all know. And that water supply is no longer available. There's no way to secure it. But NAMWUA perseveres in the meantime. It was built because you had organizations such as the Colorado River Water Users and AMWA, which is Arizona Municipal Water Users Association. They're mainly down in the southern part of the state. These are organizations that had membership, that had access to Colorado water, had access to alternative water sources. But the northern and the central state municipalities, they didn't have those type of access. We needed a membership. We needed to collaborate with each other so we could make sure that there was fair water distribution, that we were not being left out when water was being thought of and when policy and rules and regulations and bills were being passed.
So kind of like banding together to guard our best interests, kind of a watchdog group. Yeah.
That is exactly right. Exactly. And that's what, NAMWUA started off, and projects and various opportunities have changed over the years, but that mission to band together, to share information, to try to work on regional goals, to understand what the community needs are so that we can get that and direct it down south, where maybe, the voices of the northern, smaller communities may not always be at the top of the legislative agenda. So what does NAMWUA do? So we kind of broke it down. It does quite a few things, but I'm going to broke it down in some of the more major aspects. Encourage resource planning that provides sustainable water supply to meet projected growth. Okay, so this is our objective. There's multiple strategies to get to this objective. One of those strategies is to evaluate and encourage development of regional water supplies. So on the map here, we got the Prescott AMA. Several of the NAMWUA members are in the Prescott AMA. So there are members who are not in the Prescott AMA. But within the AMA, we use that organization to approach and try to work on things together that can help us out and have mutual benefit. Regional planning is something, you know, that I think you've heard that Chino Valley has talked a lot about regional planning lately. I think they passed a resolution just recently where they want to try to do more regional planning efforts. We are encouraged to work with them on those aspects. There's things that we have to do to advance aquifer health and maybe take even advantage in the future of putting stormwater in the assured water supply, that we could work with Prescott Valley and with Chino Valley in order to try to get a plan that works for all the communities and is stronger by the fact that it's supported by all those communities. Another strategy is encouraging and supporting water conservation. So again, all of the membership involved in NAMWUA have water conservation programs. We're all trying to reach objectives of making sure we're using our water as efficiently as possible. So NAMWUA is a pathway. It's a resource that we can understand what the city of Flagstaff is doing, or what Arizona Water Company is bringing and helping the city of Sedona with, given that they're a big water company organization with a large water conservation team who's just dedicated to water conservation across Arizona. They bring the their water conservation team provided a really great presentation a couple of board meetings ago for our board, where they were talking about what they're doing, what their objectives were, what they were projecting for their communities. We got a lot of good ideas from that. So that type of resource and collaboration supporting water conservation. Financial support. Finding funding sources for various opportunities. Again, we share those resources at the NAMWUA meetings. So members, we always have a report from each of the members at each of our TAC meetings, and all of the members are very supportive and very sharing of any type of funding opportunities, any type of planning efforts that they've heard of or opportunities they've heard of.
So collaboration instead of competition.
Yes, definitely. I mean, we are all looking out for for our own communities, and that's always in the forefront. But there's so many things that we share the same goals and objectives, and we can utilize those same resources and help each other understand where they're at and how they could be used. And then again, Arizona Department of Water Resources, we have to make sure that they understand the needs of the northern and central Arizona communities. So this organization provides a mechanism for us, many times through Ron Doba, sometimes through other members of the organization, to be able to go down there and make sure that our voices are being heard. And then on the other spectrum, provide information on what's happening down south in the legislature or in the Capitol about what the department is doing, and make sure we understand what they're doing down there, and that we're have that in our thought process as we're managing our water supplies and making sure we're using it to our best efforts. So provide valuable input for regulatory agencies and legislative bodies regarding proposed legislation and rulemaking. So around this time every year, NAMWUA starts compiling all of the legislative bills that have been coming out, and we start evaluating them one by one. So right now, NAMWUA TAC is doing a meeting on a weekly basis every Wednesday. We have, last time I checked, it was 75. I'm sure there's more bills on that spreadsheet now. But Ron Doba grabs all of the bills related to water and puts them on a spreadsheet, and we go over and we try to tackle 15 to 20 of those bills within the hour that we allot each week. We discuss them. Each member brings their anything that they know about the bills, and we come together on whether we're going to support, whether we're going to oppose, or whether we're going to remain neutral on those. Then we take that report. Ron provides that to the board, and then the board has an opportunity to look at that recommendation, make sure they agree with it. If they need any other questions or any other information, we try to supply it for them. Or if they say that they disagree with it, then we talk about that. But then that finalizes the NAMWUA's positions, and we take those positions down to the state legislature. And if Ron needs to go down there and he needs to lobby because we are really strongly support or strongly do not support any particular legislation, Ron will go down there and make sure that our voices are heard. Maintain our position as a recognized authority and resource for water issues in northern Arizona. So NAMWUA wants to make sure that that organization is considered that at all times. So what's our strategy for doing that? It's the partnerships. Is the members of the organization, making sure the organization is strong, fully representative of the northern and the central Arizona communities. So we are constantly talking to other communities and letting them know, if you want to join NAMWUA, it is open to you to join. We lose members, we gain members. Payson was a founding member of NAMWUA. At some point a few years back, they decided they no longer wanted to be part of the organization. They had to concentrate on some other things. Good enough. We lost them. We talked to Kingman a couple of years ago about coming in. They said thank you. They declined at that point in time, but we want to keep those communication lines open. We talked to Camp Verde a couple of years ago. They said, yeah, we want to be part. They're now part of our organization.
Ryan, I have a question. What about
Yeah.
SRP? Do you guys work with them? SRP, Salt River Project.
Salt River Project with NAMWUA. Peripherally, I would say at best, they're not part of our normal TAC or board meetings. They don't come to the organization. If we have particular topics that we think would be interesting or would be informative to our members, we will invite SRP. We'll talk about initiatives that they may be proposing down south on their infrastructure, so that we keep abreast of it. But as far as a NAMWUA member, they're not a member at this point in time. We do. I should state this though. We have a representative from Arizona Department of Water Resources who attends the NAMWUA meetings, so they're. Although not a member, we invite them, and they've attended almost all of the meetings that I've been involved with in the last 2.5 years or so.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So through a strong network of membership, that's how we try to support this initiative. And then again, getting down south and making sure that we're getting in the ear of the legislature and Arizona Department of Water Resources, so that they understand where we're at and what our positions are. Encourage and support communication, information sharing regarding water augmentation and management. So again, that sharing of information across the TAC and board members, we've kind of hit about most of those things in the last few slides on what our objectives and how, information sharing is extremely important. And that kind of accumulated in the Water Utility Leadership Forum, which is the conference that NAMWUA supports every other year. So with the WOLF is the acronym that we use, so you'll hear the WOLF conference a lot. When is the WOLF conference? Biannually. It's held every other year. It will be held this year on May 23rd, 2025. Where is it going to be located? This year it'll be located at the High Country Conference Center in Flagstaff, Arizona. And what is it? Well, it's a conference. It's a full day, 1 day conference. They start off with breakfast and then they move through a full day agenda. There's a lunch, keynote speaker. The way the conference is organized, it's on 2 tracks. There's a operators track and there's a water management track. So the operator track, we try to get speakers and topics that relate to water operations, running the water infrastructure, new regulation that may be coming on that end, contaminants, upcoming contaminants that they have to be aware of that might affect their operations. And then on the water resources track, the same thing, but on water resources, upcoming legislation, new policies or procedures, latest innovations, where is the Colorado River at this point in time? How will it affect your possible water in Arizona? So they'll try to get speakers on those tracks. Speakers, professionals from the industry, from specialized consulting firms, from Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, from Arizona Department of Water Resources. The slide has a draft agenda, and you can see that all of those sources are representative in the topics and the presentations that are going to be coming up at this event. It's a networking event. It's an opportunity to meet all of these members in person and place a face with the name, talk about our initiatives, our challenges, things that we're working on, and make sure that you're sharing information across the board. It also provides professional development hours. So those water operators who attend, they can get their professional development hours towards their requirements. Engineers can get professional development hours towards their licensing. So it's truly an educational event that can provide those needs. So, with that, save the date. It's coming up on May 23rd in 2025. If you're interested in the conference, you could go to the NAMWUA webpage. There's information on registration. If you're interested in this conference, just give me an email or send me a phone call, and I'll get you hooked up. It's a great conference. It's super informative. There's a lot of great people there, and it's something that I think is really a benefit to the city to be part of. So with that, just a quick introduction to NAMWUA. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer, or if you want me to seek out any information about NAMWUA or anything that you would like NAMWUA to cover and bring up, let me know, and we'll bring it up at the meetings.
Okay. Any comments from the committee? Okay. All right. Thank you, Brian. It's nice to know that we've got some watchdogs out there for us. All right. Thank you.
Next item E, presentation discussion regarding water service applications and potential water policy updates.
Okay, so this topic, Chairperson Rusing asked me to bring this to the Water Issues Subcommittee. So basically, there was there was 3 topics that we wanted to cover here today to kind of start a general discussion over. We're looking at amending the water service application to include information on the hazardous materials filtering and discharge into the sewer systems. So for that, in your agenda packets for this meeting, I tried to provide information on what the city does, or what our regulatory statute is for our pretreatment program. The city does have a pretreatment program and a water a water treatment specialist that manages that program, requiring that an applicant, an industrial user, needs to fill out an application that provides information on what their industry is and what chemicals they could possibly be introducing into the wastewater system and what their pretreatment processes are. So I didn't put the entire pretreatment program into your packet. It's a rather big document. So I try to just give you some of the information regarding the program, its general objectives, and again that application, so that you could see and see what that application entails. And also in there was City Code 2.1.44. So that's the portion of City Code that corresponds to that pretreatment program and talks about our authority to enforce it and gives the limitations of some of the chemicals within that program.
Yeah, let me just jump in here
Sure.
as to explain to the committee members what the rationale is here. Currently, we have a one-page water service application, and the question is not asked of the applicant, are you going to be using hazardous materials? And if so, what are you going to be discharging into our sewer system? Because I don't remember when it was, but many years ago, we entered into an agreement with a company that recycles semiconductor chips. And I don't know if nobody asked them that question, but we entered into a development agreement with them that is ironclad. And then we found out that they're discharging huge amounts of fluoride, first of all, into our wastewater system. And secondly, they're using huge amounts of water. So it's kind of a two-pronged thing here. And the city of Prescott has to spend extra tax dollars to filter that high level of fluoride that's in our wastewater. So, I don't know, Mr. Pedracki will probably remember this. There was a lawsuit, and we went to court to try to get them to filter their own hazardous material before they dumped it into our system. And we lost because it was a contract issue. We had gone into a contract with them, which also has their ability to expand and use more water. And so to protect that from happening, because as you know, we're getting a lot of semiconductor businesses, you know, Taiwan down in Phoenix, and maybe some of the ancillary companies that provide the chips, you know, they may want to move up here. And so I think it would probably be a good idea if we updated our application and asked the question, because this is a legal document, and just put it up front and say, are you going to be discharging any hazardous materials into our water supply, our wastewater system? And if so, what? And just let them know that if they do, we're going to enter into a contract with them. If not, maybe not, I don't know, that's going to require them to take care of it. And so that the quality of water that they receive from us is going to be the same quality that they give back to us. And it takes the burden off of the taxpayer. And then we also talked about, I mentioned it to Leslie, about what is a high water user, because this outfit uses, I think, an acre-foot a day or a month or something. It's an unbelievable amount. You know, is the definition for us, would that be like 100,000 gallons a day, a month or something? How many acre-feet a year? And I think that'd be good to get both these questions also into our water policy, and also not only into our current water policy, but also into the regional water policy, because, you know, these high water users may, you know, if they can't get into the city of Prescott, you know, they'll go someplace else, and then they'll still be drawing from the same aquifer, you know, the little Chino. So I thought I'd start the discussion here so that we can save taxpayer dollars and not have to filter, because we may get several more businesses doing the same thing, and then we're going to have to, it'll be increased costs, and let them know that they're going to be responsible for any hazardous materials. And fluoride, of course, is on that list. And this list was in place, it's 2013, and the lawsuit was 2017. So having this list and all, the governmental regulations and the state regulations, and that was the thing that was brought up. We had an ordinance, and the contract still superseded our ordinance even. So, Ms. Fruworth, any comments?
Well, I definitely think we've talked about it even in the work that we're doing with our economic development strategy, that we're not looking for high water users. So having a definition clearly defined by the city of Prescott, I think is something that is very helpful even when we're out there attracting. So we're all, no matter who you are from the city of Prescott, you're understanding and speaking the same way. I also agree that if industrial or other kind of commercial business users are entering anything into our sewer system, we absolutely would need to know that ahead of time, and we absolutely would want to be negotiating that they do the cost, because as we're finding out with PFAS and other things, these costs are starting to be unbearable for the city of Prescott. So I'm all for pursuing economic development, but I want to go in eyes wide open. And eyes wide open means that those questions should be on our application as we start engaging with companies and businesses that want to come and do business with the city of Prescott. So I'm supportive, Kathy.
Yeah. Mr. Gambogi, what are your thoughts?
I'm not clear what we're doing here. Are we listening to a presentation from staff or a presentation from you?
It's both.
Well, what's our purpose?
Our purpose is to have a discussion to protect our wastewater treatment facility from having to filter waste, hazardous materials that are dumped into it by private companies. Should the private company be responsible for it, or should the taxpayers be responsible for it? And also, we need to define who a high water user is, because we cannot afford to have companies come up here and use an acre-foot a day for their operations and employ a handful of people. And if you've kept up with current events, these data centers, when we were down in Phoenix at the Arizona League, that was a big topic. And in fact, when I went to the NAMWUA meeting, that was a big topic. The data centers, they've been coming to Arizona, mostly in southern Arizona. They use a huge amount of water for cooling, and they use, actually a huge amount of power too, which is a concern. And can we support something like that up here? So we need to have this conversation. It's forward thinking and also retro thinking. When we look at our past mistakes, do we want to keep making those mistakes? So that's why we're having the conversation. Mr. Podracki, you've been around a long time. What do you think?
I think there are a couple things kind of going on. One is the city does have an existing permitting structure for industrial wastewater. So presumably this won't be applicable to a residential bucket of water, but may be applicable to a commercial bucket of water.
Correct.
What's the general process, Brian, of getting a discharge, getting one of those permits?
Yeah, so
in relation to, like, someone comes and asks for water, they fill out an application for this committee now, I assume. Does it make sense to put something on that application that even asks the question? Or is it something like, if you're a commercial user drawing from a commercial bucket, do you plan on using hazardous waste in the discharge?
I think either one of those could work. I don't see any particular problem with putting a question on the WSA application to draw a little bit of information from upfront. Usually the water service applications are quite a bit upfront because people want to make sure they're going to have water before they move too much forward with their engineering and everything financial and all of that. So that I don't think that hurts in any particular way. What will happen is that eventually as a project needs to produce permits, they're going to have to submit that pre-treatment application if they're involved in any of those any industrial application in chemicals, and that will go through, and they're going to have to get that will actually be a permitting process to get through that pre-treatment process. I asked the water treatment specialist, I was talking to him about this to kind of get an understanding of the program a little bit. And I said, is there a way that it could slip by though? That maybe there's, something comes in and it kind of just slips through the permitting center and nobody really associates it with an industrial chemical. Is there a way it might get by that way? Do we have to put some fail-safes on it? And what he told me is, he said the fail-safe is that he himself is not only responsible for the pre-treatment permit, but every backflow preventer that is needed on every application or every water service connection. So that's the fail-safe mechanism, is that him as the specialist who's looking for these things, he's looking at every backflow preventer, and so he knows if anything ever slipped by and it needs to go back to that pre-treatment process. So,
well, that's a good point. But I look at our water service application not asking that question. To me, that's a big loophole that can cause confusion, and the fact that all these permits depend on one person. You never know. He could be on vacation and then somebody takes his place or something gets okayed. I've seen that happen before with other bureaucratic organizations.
What's the question you want to ask on the form?
Are we finished?
I'm asking, what question do you want to ask on the form?
I'm making a statement. I'm pitching my rationale here. I'm not asking a question yet.
Can I add, Ted, that on the background section, it says Chairperson Rusino has requested a discussion to evaluate the following items, and there's 3 items that she has put in for us to be considering. So, and I look at the bottom of the form, and there's 3 questions right now. I have seen no reason why we couldn't add some of these other questions so that everybody, not just the one expert in City of Prescott, but everybody's clear that as we're evaluating water, we're evaluating especially visibility to hazardous materials, self-filtering, and what they'll be putting into our sewer systems. Fluoride has become a big political concern, and there's been all sorts of discussions in the community out on Nextdoor. Also, people are talking about fluoride in the water in the City of Prescott. So I do think these kind of things, no one would have talked about PFAS 10 years ago. If somebody's doing something that's producing that in our town, we might love the tax ramifications, but then next thing you know, we're spending more than that to self-filter it back out. So I do think there's some visibility that it would be good to have on the water service agreement so we know what we're evaluating when it comes in. So I'm supportive of this. Says this is a discussion only, no formal action will be taken. But I do actually think it's worth discussing, having our water resources group take a look at some of these documents and figure out what we need to do to be ahead on, especially as we're pushing this council's pushing economic development. We want to bring in more commercial. So I think now is the perfect time to be having this discussion and to be adding these kind of things. But I look to you all as the experts who have lived through this to come to us with a recommendation.
And that's true. We're going to encourage economic development, but we don't want to encourage economic development that it's going to be detrimental to our water supply. And so this is just a discussion to kind of start the conversation and maybe get some information together to bring it put forward to council for a vote and have it as an agenda item in the future. And, excuse me, yes?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to follow up on that. One of the things that and we can discuss if you want to move forward in this direction or in another way. But yeah, we can definitely put together a question and on the WSA and bring it to council, or we can bring it back here right before council again so that you can review some documentation and the language that we want to put together.
Yes, Lois? Yes.
Yeah, so I personally am not sure where we are on a timeline with working on our long-term water management plan.
Okay.
And I've only been around a year and a half or so, but nothing's quick. So I'd like to understand if we can do some quick wins by just renewing our form and reposting it with a few quick little questions. And then absolutely the full council should have much more discussions as part of the long-term water management plan. We should have much more discussions as part of that. But I don't know where we're at timeline-wise.
Well, that's a good question. Can we administratively change the form just to ask some different questions without going through a big formal rigmarole? I know with changing the water policy, we would definitely go to council vote, but just changing, because I don't know if this form originally even, council even saw it. I mean, we talk about water service applications all the time, and like for this Marina Apartments, we never saw their application, which I asked.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll make sure to get that into you.
We would like to see the applications.
And Brian, how did the original application come into being? I assume typically they're administratively done, so I wouldn't see an issue adding a question.
Okay.
Now,
Sounds good.
when you and I think as the chair acknowledged, if we change the water policy, which is that number 2 thing, then that obviously would have to go to the full council. But I mean, asking the question, I'm not getting any heartburn, I suppose.
Okay.
From a legal perspective.
Well, that's fine. We can put some language together for your review so that you can just give us the final okay, and then we'll we'll change the form.
I think we could have that ready for the March.
Yeah, I think
March
so.
meeting. I think that would be wonderful.
Definitely.
We have to look at this because we used to have a water issues oversight committee.
Okay.
That would address changes in the water policy and analyze things and bring these things forward. But we don't have that anymore. So this body has to be the catalyst now, which is okay, and bring these things forward. So I think this is a conversation we need to start. And if we can add this to the application administratively, chat with legal and our city manager and water resource people, and add this, a couple of questions, concerning hazardous materials, and maybe even put something on the application, a disclaimer saying anything you discharge, you're going to be responsible for filtering and cleaning up, because that's, like we have gas stations that are supposed to be filtering, their stormwater off of their driveways. And they're supposed to have a complicated filtering system before the water runoff from the gas station goes into our stormwater.
Yeah.
But that's not on, this application. It'd be nice if it was.
But those are addressed through our stormwater program.
Yeah. Okay.
And the permitting associated with that.
Alrighty.
Yes, I can.
Let's come up with next month, an application amendment that asks some questions, and I'll be happy to work with you on that in the meantime. And then also we need to start amending the water policy, ask the question, define what a high water user would be. And
on the high water user, Member Fruworth brought up the economic development plan, and we have that plan. We put it in to a resource folder that we have for the long-term water management plan. We're looking at the economic development plan. We're looking at the general plan. We're looking at many sources of information that will help guide the understanding, the projected future growth for the city and what projection it wants to be on, so that we can understand the water needs on that.
Yeah, it's all interconnected.
It's all interconnected.
And it's going to take time.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, as a stopgap measure just for the city of Prescott, it might be advantageous to have an example of here's what we came up with, a number, 100,000 gallons a day or whatever we think we can tolerate, because it will bust our water budget. But there is an off-ramp, if we feel that it's, economically advantageous to approve it, then we could.
Well, I'll put this for your insight, and I have no objection to coming up with a number. The issue being that the number might not be supported fully until after we've had those thorough reviews we talked about. I will say this, that this body makes recommendations on water usage. If it exceeds the budget, it has to go through the appeals process, and it can be voted up or down by the full council. So there's a process in place, regardless of a high water user definition, to that the council has in order to determine whether they think that water usage is sufficient at this time or within the city's objectives is how they want to move forward. So again, I can try to create some definitions, but what I really like to do is I would like to take that as a step in the long-term water management plan, look at it and evaluate not just a number, not just a definition, this is a high water user, this is not, but look at it from different aspects, like different usages, and provide some type of requirement behind that. If you are a high water user above a certain threshold, you're going to have to create a conservation plan, or you're going to have to follow these rules in order to ensure that we're tracking that water as best as we can. That's going to take a little bit more time than just coming up with a number, and that's why I like it to be part of the long-term water management plan.
Holistic approach.
Exactly.
But what I'd like to also add is the purpose of our 2022 water management water policy was to encourage sustainable growth, well-managed, well-planned, sustainable growth that would actually encourage economic development, because they know that our water is being managed wisely. So by having a definition of a high water user, I think would actually protect us from, like, say, a bad actor that came up here and just wanted to exploit our groundwater. I don't know, say a foreign entity that wanted to grow alfalfa or something for export, if you know what I mean. So anyway, well, thank you, everybody, for listening to this. And I really appreciate.
I will follow up on March with some language, with some recommendations, some things that we can do, and we can further discuss and have something to look at.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All righty. Thank you.
Item F, 2022 Water Management Policy Discussion, Current Residential and Non-Residential Water Budget Overview for January 1st, 2025 through January 24th, 2025.
Okay, so our last item on the agenda, this one will be fairly quick because it's fairly short. As you know, this body has set a water budget for the city. It's a biannual water budget with water budgets for residential and non-residential usages. For January 1st to June 30th, 2025, the budget was set for 25 acre-feet for that 6-month period for both the residential and the non-residential budget. So So we put together these tables for you that kind of show you how much water was allocated or reserved for these budgets during up to a certain date. In this particular instance, that date is January 24th. So this table is good. These tables are good up to January 24th. At that point, we had to cut it down so we could get prepared for the meeting. So with the residential projects, as you can see, there were no residential projects that were reserved water for up to the 24th of January. Slow. It was a slow month. The non-residential project table also shows that we also did not have any reservation on water for non-residential projects. And then for informational purposes, we give you this table. Anything that is considered an existing contract, a commitment that the city has already made to supply water, won't go flow through the budget because the city's already made its commitment to that. And so we track those separately and provide them here for you to review, because occasionally there will be a large one, and you probably want to know about it. In this case, they're not large; they're all single-family residential. They were in existing groundwater subdivisions. So what does that total up? Sorry, my eyes aren't what they used to be. 0.68 acre-feet in the existing contract list for this point in time. So that's just a summary of what's gone on so far in the year. And if you have any questions over that, I can answer them for you, or try.
Any more comments? Do we have any announcements?
The only announcement that I don't have a slide for you today, but kind of per our earlier NAMWUA presentation, we've kickstarted the legislative process review of bills coming in. So we've had one meeting already. We reviewed about 20 out of the 75 bills. We have our next meeting coming up on Wednesday. We're going to try to hit another 20 on there, and then the recommendations just go out to the NAMWUA board and we're trying to get a finalization from the board as we move. So next March 2, what I'll probably do is I'll have a presentation for you where we go over the bills that we have looked at. At that point, we probably have looked at, if not all of them, most of them. Let you know which bills look like they might be important to the city of Prescott and up here in the northern area. And
I'd like to add the recent movement, the bipartisan movement on the formation of 5 groundwater management areas. I think that's groundbreaking. It hasn't been passed yet, but at least there has been some movement, bipartisan, to look at the areas and to protect aquifers in the rural areas.
yes.
So maybe we could keep an eye on that. And
We will definitely keep an eye on that. I opened that bill up yesterday to take a sneak peek at it. It was only 88 pages long, so it's going to take me a few days to kind of get my head wrapped around it. But Ron Doba, I think, is again a great source. Also with all my other NAMWUA partners, I call them up and I say, hey, what is this? Is this good or not good? So yes, that will be a bill we'll discuss along with any other pertinent ones to the area.
Yeah, nothing like a crisis to get government in motion.
That's the way it works.
Okay, thank you. This meeting is adjourned.